This is Learning by Doing, a podcast for employers offering young people technology work experiences. I'm Daniel Devine, an educational technologist and specialist in developing digital skills. In this episode, I'll be speaking to James Whitrod about hosting Foundation Apprentices. We will discuss getting started, the benefits that apprentices have brought to the business, and what he learned on his journey. Hello James, thank you for joining us. Can you give us a one-sentence introduction to who you are and what you do?
I'm James, and I am the head of people operations at Toolkit. Toolkit works in the healthcare sector primarily, and we pride ourselves on delivering innovative solutions which help support digital transformation.
So we're talking to you today because you've had success offering apprenticeships at different levels. And we're going to be talking a lot about experiential learning today and why it's a great thing to either support or host a young person in your business. So I thought it'd be good if we could maybe have a chat about what were Sidekit's motivations to get started offering apprenticeships. Was it something that was philanthropic, or was there a business case, or was there something else that Sidekit wanted to get out of offering these apprenticeships?
Yeah, I think it was ultimately a bit of a mix. So there's always a business case for bringing in younger people to help them learn, and obviously retaining that knowledge and that information that they would hopefully pick up as part of the apprenticeships. But it's also something that our leadership team at Sidekit are extremely keen on, and that support of young people.
I think it's really difficult to underplay the amount of learning and development and growth that a young person goes through as part of doing an apprenticeship. Something that I've heard from employers is that the benefits haven't only been with the young person though. They've said that their colleagues and the business as a whole has really benefited from the presence of the apprentices. Is that something that you found as well? Is that something that Sidekit's experienced? I'd be really interested to hear.
I think it's getting across the point that it is a really valuable experience, not just for the apprentices, but for everybody in the business, because there are individuals within the current team that we have at Sidekit that have learned a lot from just having apprentices and younger people around the organization. They've learned different things, and things have changed and moved on. And working in the field that we work in, there are constant changes to the way that things are approached and done. And having younger individuals come into the business and be able to offer a different viewpoint is a real positive point for us as a business.
So when was it that you had your first apprentices? Have you had quite a few?
I think we've got 2 currently at the moment. Our first apprentice started with Sidekit just a little under a year and a half ago.
So that was fairly recently that you got started hosting apprenticeships. So that was kind of after a lot of organizations introduced remote working. Do your apprentices work remotely, or are they permanent in an office? That's something I'd be interested to know.
Yeah, no, our entire workforce at Sidekit is remote. So all of our apprenticeships are remote workers as well. The apprenticeships are both actually based in Scotland, but we have people that work remotely through the whole of the UK down to Exeter as the furthest south.
You're quite a technical company. Have the apprentices been technical, or have you dabbled in different things?
So the apprenticeships that we have currently in the business are in the field of software development, which is obviously very technical, very IT orientated.
Let's talk a little bit about what you need to have in place before having an apprentice start. So a lot of people might be worried about needing to buy lots of things, have lots of products and service ready to go. Are there many big expenses that you find before having someone start, or is it really just a case of ensuring they have system access and a laptop?
Yeah, I think it's essentially access to the systems like you've described, having the hardware available for them to actually use. Sidekit essentially provides all of our apprenticeships with their own hardware anyway, because we're a remote first company. So it's kind of difficult being a remote first company when you do take on an apprentice, because what you have to check at that point is that they do have a reasonable working space at home, and you have to go through the health and safety checks and the assessments to make sure that their working environment in the home environment is suitable. But that's really kind of all that you have to have in place from that perspective. I think most of it comes down to the type of business that you operate and how you run. Obviously, if you're building something that is going to potentially cause injury or anything to an individual, then you might need to look at additional insurance pieces. We obviously have our own security background checks that we have to do anyway.
Something that's really key about apprenticeships and what sets them apart is the fact that you're not just building very specific skills, you are able to gain knowledge and experience of how business works. You're able to build skills about presentation, taking notes, communicating, as well as the skills that you need directly for the job. Would you be able to tell us a little bit about how you're able to give the young people experience of all these things, of all of these skills, and what a day might look like at SiteKit for one of your apprentices?
Yeah, I mean, I think you just really described it quite well, to be honest. It's about being able to experience what actually happens day to day. There's a lot of talk and there's a lot of practice around theory and about written information, and mainly the education system is based around that. But actually being able to learn practically on the job, not only the skills that they need from the perspective within software development and learning about coding and environments and how all that works, but also learning how to interact with people and how to speak to people and how to, for some of these individuals, how to be more confident when they're expressing themselves. It's something that younger people do generally tend to struggle with. You have to have a certain mentality and a mindset to be able to be confident enough to walk into a room and think, I do actually know the answer to that question. And I am going to say what I think and not worry about somebody sort of turning around who maybe has been in the job for 20, 25 years and saying, I don't really agree with you. So the experiential learning for me is all about that sort of whole approach to being comfortable within the workplace.
I think that confidence is really important, and I agree. I think it is something that you can only gain through knowing that you're doing the right thing. So, speaking of doing the right thing, what does a typical day for an apprentice look like at SiteKit? Is there a pretty fixed structure to it? How do you get them started? How do you develop that confidence?
Most of our work day is based around projects and inputting into those. And for the developers, they work around sort of backlogs and having specific tasks and work items. So one of the key things that they have every single day is a stand-up meeting where they go in and they speak to their peers and they speak to other people, and they have to run through obviously the items that are on the task list. So they will go through those in sort of detail, and they'll discuss them with other members of the team. And to kind of be thrown into that environment, if you've not experienced it before, is a real learning curve. So they will go into it, and you will see distinct types of individuals. Some will come in and they'll be quite vocal and they'll want to talk, and others will come in and they'll be more observationist, and they will stand there and they'll sort of listen to what's going on around them, and they don't always tend to contribute. But going into those sort of stand-up meetings and learning about how they run and what the roles and responsibilities are is a great practical experience piece for those individuals, because it's something that they wouldn't necessarily do in a practical setting, but they would learn the theory of it within their courses.
Yeah, exactly. You can do as many textbook questions as you want, but until you're sitting there at the desk with real data or using the real tools or working with colleagues, you're not getting an accurate representation of what software development looks like in the business world. Because when you're at university or college or school, the bulk of your programming time is actually writing code. Whereas when you are in a business, a lot of the time is planning the code, doing it in a structured and predictable way, documenting it, communicating with other people how it works. It's a slightly different set of skills that you're not going to get unless you experience it in that supportive environment, which is what it is that you're aiming to give them.
And I think the other part of it is learning to work with other individuals in other roles as well. If you're working in a team of people, you are essentially in the software development capacity. You're working with project managers, you're working with product owners, you're working with testers, you're working with people that are very heavily security focused, and learning how to deal with all the different personality types and traits and individualities that come of working in a team when you're essentially used to just attending a university course or a college course where you're with essentially peers who are learning the same thing that you're learning and probably have a lot of the same viewpoints that you do. It's a massively steep learning curve for someone to walk into a workplace and be able to experience that on an actual practical project. And that's, I think, one of the key things that Sitekit tries to achieve with the apprenticeships and the experiential learning is to give people that grounding that, this is how a proper working project works.
So, James, let's talk a bit about how you plan and prepare for hosting an apprentice, because there's obviously quite a lot of different things that you can do to prepare yourself and get the young person prepared. But is there any activities that you've found really quite valuable to do?
I think the main activities that we try to do with the apprentices is start the onboarding process for them joining the company quite early. So we'll start conversations really early with them, and we'll try and gain an understanding of what they're like as an individual. So it's not just focused around obviously what they're going to potentially be doing in the workplace, but also, what are their interests outside of the business. So when they do join the company, we ensure that they get time to speak to everybody. And that goes right the way through from the CEO all the way across the business, across all the different team members that we have within Sitekit.
How do you facilitate them meeting everyone if it's remotely? Do you have like a schedule, like a timetable that they follow in their first weeks or days, or how does that look when they get started?
Yeah, I mean, in their first few days, we'll try and map out, obviously, like I said, with the onboarding processes that we have in place, we'll try and map out their day so that they've got regular meetings and they'll be able to speak to people. And being completely remote, those are done on Teams and they're usually video calls, unless they are lucky enough to sort of tie in timing wise with one of our company-wide meetings, which will invite obviously apprentices or anyone that's going to join the company or anyone who's joined recently. They will obviously attend those and they'll be face to face. And I think that's probably highlighted one of the main changes that Sitekit as a business is looking to make, is having more opportunity now as a remote workforce to do those kind of face to face meetings. And that's a change in planning that we're going to hopefully implement over the next 12 months, basically to help with that onboarding of not just apprentices, but other people.
So Sitekit works primarily in healthcare space, and there's obviously lots of privacy, security, things that you have to bear in mind as an organization, and you probably have a lot of regulations and things that you have to comply with. When an apprentice comes in, what do you kind of have in place to allow them to work? So do you have sort of separate systems? Do they tend to work on projects that are using like mock data, or how do you deal with creating an environment that's supportive and still representative, but they're not going to damage something or break something or expose some data? And obviously that would pressure on them not to make mistakes, but yeah, how does Sitekit deal with those things?
Yeah, sure. I think that's part of the processes that are in place that Sitekit operate to, things like the secure development life cycles. So apprenticeships will come in and they'll primarily work on sort of not necessarily dummy data, but not always the data that is key and live. And they'll work on the solutions around those. We do as much as possible try to involve them in working on live data, because and this is my personal opinion, there's nothing better than learning what you're doing by actually working with the information that you should be working with. So we try to give them those experiences. And I think in our environments, we have such a heavy testing regime to go through those security and governance concerns from the business perspective, that it is very, very rare that issues are missed or not picked up. So the apprentices, they have that sort of safety net, as it were, where they can obviously learn and experience that, but nothing essentially, it goes out until it's gone through a rigorous testing regime anyway.
So thinking about you personally, James, what would you say that you have learned or gained from the process?
Yeah, myself personally, obviously, I have quite a big input into the onboarding and how they obviously join the company and the decisions that are made in terms of which teams they're going to join and which people they might fit with personally, and what type of work is going to suit best their coursework that they're doing, and providing that support. I think the biggest piece of advice that I would give is, if you're considering taking on an apprentice, is to really engage in the conversations with the colleges and the universities, or where these particular people are coming from, and ask them the question directly.
Good advice. There's always lots of people that you can speak to, whether that is the learning provider or organisations like Skills Development Scotland. James, thank you very much for joining us today and giving us your thoughts and your insight. It's much appreciated. For more information about learning by doing and experiential learning, check out our toolkit for employers offering young people technology work experiences. You'll find it on the Skills Development Scotland website alongside pick up and play guides, templates and easy to follow advice.